welcome back to Reykjavik. Last time we knitted the body, so this is mine, and like you can see I made it like really short because I really want a crop sweater. And so it's knitted in the round, and then in the middle I have the two pearl stick stitches, and I made a short pearl just to make sure that this little edge stitch like is quite neat. And today we're going to knit the sleeve and draw the giveaway. And so remember to participate in the knit along and be eligible to the giveaway. You have to subscribe to this channel, like the teaser video, and join my Facebook group optionally. And of course you have to buy the Kristylopi sweater. So I've cast on my stitches, and now I'm just going to join in the round. You can of course use double pointed needle or sock needle, but I personally completely fell for the magic loop. The only requirement is to have a cable that is really long enough, like 80 centimeters. I think it's 32 inches, and that is really flexible because you really want to be able to make the loop and not be entrave. So to make the magic loop, you draw the cable about in the middle, and then you have all your stitches on the needle. You make sure that you're not twisting them. You have your tail here, we don't care about that one, and then we have our skein yarn, so you put it at the back here in front of the needle. If you leave it here when you join, then you're going to make a yarn over, so you just want to keep it on top of the needle at the back. And then what we want to do is to work in the round, so we want to go with this needle inside that one, and this is where the magic happens. So you have one loop here, and then we draw this needle. So we have two loops, one here and one on the other side, and now we can absolutely knit into this first stitch, and then we take our yarn and we start knitting. So this is where the magic is happening. You have one loop on the left and one loop on the right. And just like for the sweater, I'm always doing the short purl or the Norwegian purl immediately after my last knit stitch. So here we go. We are at the end of the needle, so I end with two knit stitches in this case. So we are here, this is our circle, this is what is facing you, so we're going to turn our work. So now we have here we see the reverse, we see the reverse stocking stitch here, and now we want to knit with this needle in this first stitch. So first we have to draw the cable, so I usually put it hot here and then push it. And this is still at the back, but because I'm going to make a purl stitch, I can leave it right away on the front. And then we're knitting to the end of the needle. So this is my, like I would be knitting needle 3 and needle 4, and this is my front, and this is the back needle. So I have 1, 2, oops, So there is usually a long float here, but it's kind of normal, it felt. So there's a lot of people who turn it around and then they get like confused. So this is really my front needle, it's facing me. Then I turn, and this is now is my front needle, and then I pull the cable and then push it through the stitches. Now I put the yarn at the back, on top of the needle at the back, not to make a yarn over. Draw the cable and then continue knitting the ribbing. Oh, maybe I'm going to go this way this time. And then here it's the purl stitch that is twisted, remember, and because we're not knitting back and forth but in the round, we have to go into the purl stitch from the back loop to untwist it and then purl it. And then I'm going to make those two shorter because I find it's just easier. So here I have to go into the back loop. I'm going here. This one is normal for the moment. And here again into the back loop, purling short. And here what I'm going to do is start, because I don't like to start at the middle of the needle with some purl. So I'm just going to pull this so that those two stitches are going on the back. So I'll just pull the cable now. So I'm here, I turn, and then I always start with 2 knit stitches because I find it like easier. So 1, 2, and here I'm going to the back loop and then doing purl, then knitting normally. So we just basically like untwisted in anything that is twisted. And you can really feel it under your thumb, if it's twisted or not. So I'm turning, pulling the cable, pushing through, making this one at the back, pulling the other cable. We really start to see what it looks like now. So I'm doing untwisted but with the Norwegian purl. So you go with the needle under, remember, at the back and here. But I'm going then in the back loop. So but otherwise it doesn't change much from what we were doing last time. And we start to have our ribbing. So we're going to continue like this until we reach the required length, which I don't remember exactly what it is, but I will find out. So I'm done with my ribbing. It was 5 centimeters. 2 inches, and now I'm going to change for the bigger needle. and then I'm going to make a few increases. So there are the bigger the sizes, the more increases, because the ribbing is usually around the bone, so there's not a lot of meat around there, but then it starts growing bigger. So, and then we want some multiple so that we can work the pattern. So I'm going to get my bigger needle. So if I don't have a bigger needle, I can use the one from my body. And then what I usually do is that I slide the stitches on a smaller needle. It can be a very small one, doesn't matter, just to hold them rather than putting them on hold on a piece of yarn. I'd rather just slip them so I can just knit them right away, and it doesn't matter. So it's like, I mean, the loop has already been made. So I'm done with sliding, so all the stitches, and I just would not want to have a bigger needle because otherwise I would distort the stitches. But then I'm going to secure into the knitting so they don't slide off. Now I have a needle ready for my sleeve. So I'm going to change needle size right away, and I'm going to knit and untwist, of course, anything that is untwist, and I'm going to make the increases. So to make the increases, I'll just make like some, just follow instructions, but I will just make one. So to make the M1, you're basically taking the strands that is between two stitches, and then you're going to knit it. So if you knit it just like this, it's going to make a hole. So what we want to do really is to have it twisted. So we usually use the needle, so you can just go, for example, underneath and then go inside, so you are making the twist, and now it's twisted. So we can twist to the left and to the right, we'll see that later on, but for this very first row it doesn't really matter, just be consistent. So, and now we are ready to knit after the short. So it's a 6 stitches repeat, and to follow a short we just knit the color as they are shown, and we knit until the end of the short, and then we repeat always from number 1 to number 6, and then we arrive at the end of the round. Then we'll go to the second round and just follow the colors. So I'm going to show you a little bit how to do the color work. This is a very simple one, so it will be easy. I will go maybe more into depth when we are working on the yoke motif. I also had to choose my colors, so like I said, I was going to go with the flow. So since this is kind of a flower part, I had just decided maybe to start with like earthy tones and then just go up like with some greens and then some more colors for the flowers. So I went into my stash and I found some leftovers. So this is some Kristylopi, not sure what the color is, but it's kind of a murky kind of color. And then this is a leftover, some M1L, so it's the Kristylopi that is been spun with silk. And so I want to have this one, the darkest one, so I will for the sleeve do the contrast, start with the yellowish and then knit the darker one, and we'll see how it will look like. Of course you want to make sure that there is enough contrast, so there are different ways to check if there's a contrast. One is to just take the color, take a picture in black and white and see how the color are contrasting. It's usually not more like not really the color the same, it's more like the tonality of them. And then there are some quicker way, I would say. You don't always have, well, yes, we do always have our phone. So here I have my sweater and then the colors I want to use. So I would just say that there's enough contrast, but just to make sure, one good way to do is just to take, so I'm taking one of the strands from my main color, and then I'm going to lie it together with the other one and twist it. And when you twist it, you can see better if it's going to pop up. And I can still see the green and so forth. So I think it should be all right. On this one also, I'm going to make it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good way to find out. So as an example here, if I had some green like this, I can check also. And here I would say it's not necessarily the best color. I mean, they're like kind of really blending together. So, well, this is how I would kind of choose colors. Oh, when working color work, there are different ways to hold the yarns. But you would usually want never to twist them, so you can hold the yarns either both on your right hand or both on your left hand, or one on the right, one on the left. For this pattern, I would have my main color, I will keep it on my right here, and I will have my contrasting color on the left. And then I would never want them to twist ever. And then with Icelandic knitting, I already explained to you that the yarn wants to open up and occupy the space you give it, so we usually don't trap the yarn and we let the floats go at the back. And the most important when knitting color work is that your strands in knitting stay like really elastic. So you have floats at the back, and even if they're a little bit long, they would tend to fall to the fabric. But they keep elastic. So let's have a look at the hands first. Keep in mind that you always keep both yarns separated and you never twist them. And then I will explain to you why. It's something called color dominance. So I have one on the right and one on the left, and they will always keep this way. So I will work this one here, and then the contrasting color here, and then the main color. So if I want to keep both of my yarn in the right hand, I can just usually a tensioning around my little pinky. I take one, the main color here on my finger, and then on the major, the other color, and then I will knit one with each color. Interlocking fingers, and so you will notice that this one is always underneath and this one is on top. And I have to turn my work and continue doing my magic loop, and I go back and do that and continue knitting. So I ended up with Start with the main color. And then you will notice that when I do that, if I look at the back, I always have my floats here. My floats in my contrasting color is always lying underneath, and this one is on top. No, there is one underneath here. Oops. There's one underneath here, and then one on top. So the one on top is the main color, the one on my right, and the main underneath. The one underneath is my contrasting color, the one I keep on my left. I'm going to put them back on the needle. Now I can also hold my yarn in the left hand. So for that I can, of course, do that. And then let it go. Of course it's not so efficient, but it does work. And then I can also put them both on my hands. So for that, usually also do the pinky, and I will have one color that I keep on the index and one color that I keep on the finger. So usually I would try to have on the finger the dominant color, the one that is on the left, and on the major index the other one. So the one that is lying underneath is the one that is the closest to you. So we can go here and then here, and by keeping them both on different finger, it helps keeping them separated. So when I go and pick the main color, and I don't pick it from underneath, I'm always picking from the top, so that my floats at the back stay the same. That is, that the contrasting colors is floating underneath and the main color is floating on the top. So this is valid whether you knit continental or English. There are just some differences. You knit Portuguese or something because you are actually purling, so it's the contrary. It will be the main color should be on underneath and the other one on the top, but that's another story. So now I'm the end of my round. So now I'm going to knit the round 2. So knit the 1, 2, it's go like checkered. So I will knit the main colors with the contrasting colors. And now I can show you how to hold yarn. So here, this is where I have to be careful. You know, you would sometimes have to tend to take it like this, where to take it like this, where this one should still stay underneath here like this. You don't want to invert them like they would come normally, so they will like stay and twisted. So if you're going to work with one in each end, I will have well, the main color on my right hand, knitting continental, and then the other one on my left hand. So I'll start doing the left one. And then knitting the main color and picking. Sometimes I find that it helps, like to actually wrap rather than picking, like wrapping. Sometimes it can help if you're not used to picking. Oops, I have to take both strands. And this really helps. So I mean, I always have the contrasting color underneath and the main color on top. So here on the third row, I start knitting 2 with the main color, then 1 contrasting, 1 main color, 1 contrasting, 1 main color, and then start again 2 main colors. So basically I start with 2, but then afterwards I would always have like 3 in the main colors in between the little contrasting color stitches. So it's quite straightforward. So now we're knitting 3, 1, 2, 3, and then here, because we have 3 stitches, we want, with our left hand, we want to stretch the stitches so that the float is not too tight. So we're knitting with this one, so we want to stretch the stitches. They're not close to each other, and then we knit 2 little one like this, and then we'll have 1 and 2 and 3, and here I am at 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, and 3, and then I kind of spread them enough so that my float is not so tight that it gets all pucker, because I want to keep it elastic. And then 1 and 2 and 3. So now we're going to close this little triangle by knitting contrasting color here, and then here, and then all the other stitches in between. So there are 5 of them. They will all be with the main color, and so we start with only 3 and we'll end with 2, but we always have like 5 in between. And it's going to be like really important now to really stretch our stitches on the right needle so that the knitting doesn't get all puckered. So it's like 1, 2 and 3, and then I kind of keep them spread, and I knit this 1 stitch here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then I mean I really want to keep my floats at the back loose. So one thing you can do to keep it loose is 1, to stretch. 2, if you want to control more, you can just simply take your knitting and put it out on the wrong side, just like this, inside out. So you have your floats inside out. It's on the exterior, so you can see them better, and then they take a little bit more space, so you're sure you're not too tight. I mean, you don't want to be too loose either, but usually it's the tightness that is really more of an issue. Here I also have to change again. 4 and 5. And here, now I can't really stretch my stitches, and I don't really want my yarn to come like straight here, so I will just put my finger just to make the strand like follow the corner, like the rounded corners, so it's not tight. No, I just want to make sure it's loose enough. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then here. So if I'm going to knit with those 2 here, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then here before I strand, I will just stretch the stitches and then only knit the other color. And there we go, and then we have elastic enough, and then you can see on the back that all the floats are aligning, and we always have the yellowish murky color underneath, and then the strand of the main color on top underneath, and then on top just one, and then a long one. So at this point I don't need this color anymore, so I just break it. And then I'm going to start knitting with my other colors. So I have to knit 1, and then I'll take this one, I put it on the left, and this is simply how I will introduce it. I'll just very simply, oops, like this, and then it's like 1, 2 and 3, and then taking that one, so I'm done with the color work of my sleeve. It's elastic enough, as you can see. And before we go on, I want to show you what is concretely this color dominance I was talking about. So I'm just going to show you 2 hats. Can you spot the difference between the two? So this one was knitting with the white as a color dominance, and this one was also knitted with the white, but as a recessive color. So when we knit in strand knitting, there's always one color that wants to pop up more. It has to do with how the yarn tension is. It's a little bit like the short pearl. There's always like a bit more yarn going in one. So there's always one color, and that's the color we keep on our left, the one that is lying underneath the other at the back, that is popping up more. So in this particular design, we really want to have all the diagonal, the little details to pop up well. So we will always have our contrasting color dominance. This is a closer look here of when the white is not dominant, when the motif color is not dominant. So you can see that the vertical line are very neat, but then all the diagonal, I mean the stitch is a little bit smaller, and they kind of tend to disappear inside the knitting. So that's why it's important to keep that in mind. Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't matter so much. So now it's going to be time to start the increases on our sleeves, and I'm going to show you how to do the make one left and make one right, because we are going to make increases I mean, that are under the arm here on both sides, and they will be symmetrical. So I have finished knitting from my shirts. So, and the last round in the shirt was just like a plain round, and now I'm going to make increases. So this is the end of my round. You can see it because there's a little tail here, and I usually don't really put markers because my needles serve as markers. So this is the end of my round where I have my tail, and here I have half of the stitches and half of the stitches. So the pattern will tell you to put a marker after a certain number of stitches, that is after half of the stitches. So we can put a marker here if we want, just in case, you know, it would just like pop up. But I have my stitches, so we will be increasing one stitch from one stitch, then increase one here, and then at the end of the round stop one stitch before and increase here in between. So we will always have 2 stitches under the arms between the increases. And I usually like to put also a row marker, so I'll show you how I deal with row markers. But first we're going to work the first increase. So because it's symmetrical, this increase will increase to the left and this one will be to the right. So to make an increase, oops, what is happening here? Oh yeah, it was just so I knit 1, and then I'm going to take the strand here that is between. So if I'm twisting it to the left, it makes the left increase, and if I'm twisting it to the right, it makes the right decrease. So here we want to increase to the left, so we want to twist it like this. So to twist it like this, we're just going with our left needle into the front of the strand in between, and then we going to knit this one through the back loop, and it makes a left increase. Then we continue to the end of the round knitting. So I'm almost at the end of my round, and I'm going to put a marker here. So how do I put a row marker? I usually take a piece of yarn of a very contrasting color to make sure. Then I will make a big knot at the end, so rolling around like this to make sure it doesn't slip, and then I'll just put it here between 2 stitches, so the knot is there. The knot is there so that, you know, it doesn't go away, so it's here like this. Oh, and then I am at the end of my run, so this is where I have to make the right increase, the make one to the right. So for this one, I'm going to, with my left needle, lift the strand from the back and then knit into the front loop, and it makes a right leaning increase. And then I'm just going to knit plain round, the number of plain rounds indicating on the pattern, so it depends on the sizes, of course. This marker is very easy to count the row. Usually what I will count is the strands in between. So I have the red and the strand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6. So I will have to go, I have an increase every 9 rounds. That is, I have 9 rounds plans and 1 round with the increase. So I will need to have 10 little strands on top before I do the next increase. And when you put it in the light, you can really see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It makes it like really easy to count. I have like 10 little strands in between, so now I'm going to, and you may have a different number depending on the size you're working on. Then I will put my my yarn at the back and then continue knitting, and then this is where I will have to make the increases. So I will just go to the end of my round and then start making the increase on the next round and at the end of this one. That says sometimes I'm cheating, and make sure not to forget I made an increase here and here right away, but it's easier to write it in a pattern the other way around, so it doesn't change much otherwise, because since knitting is a spiral, the increases will be made at the same place. So for the left leaning, I go to the front, and I'm going to show it continental this time. So I'm going into the front, and then I knit into the if I can. Well, you can tell that I'm usually making my increase the English way, and then here we go, and then continue, and then do the right leaning. Do the right leaning increase at the end of the round. I've been not cheating, but I've been already knitting another sleeve, and here you can see I've already made 1, 2, 3 increases, and I use different colors, and now I have reached the point where I can make an elbow shaping. So I'm going to show you how I fit it. So the elbow shaping. So this is something I saw on an old Icelandic sweater from the, it's a men's sweater that is in the museum, the textile museum in Blönduós, and it's an old sweater that was knitted at the turn of the 19th century, at the turn of the 20th century, sorry, and it's like kind of mended everywhere. You know, you can see the cuff have been reknitted and sewn on and so forth, except the elbow, and it's so crisp you can even still count the stitches. It's amazing. And this is because there is kind of a little heel, like an elbow heel that is made. So I thought it was a really good idea to use that in sweater. And so if I have my arm straight, you can see there is a bit of extra fabric. So do I keep my arm straight most of the time? No, I mean, we usually have, you know, the elbow always a little bit bended, so it really doesn't show this kind of extra fabric, but it does give extra fabric, which means that it's going to wear out far less, because otherwise you always, if you don't have any, each time you put a bit more tension on your sleeve. So it's like a really nice way to do that. I think it's completely brilliant. So I'm going to show you now where to place this elbow shaping. So I will just try the sleeve on and decide where I want to have the cuff. I mean, some of you want to have the cuff like going like almost like around the hand. Some, like me, would rather have it a bit shorter. And then I'll just see where my elbow is, and then add the short rows at this part. So, and they're actually not sure there's so much difference in proportions between this part here and this part there, but I mean, I suppose it depends. I mean, the best is really to try it on. So now I'm going to start doing the elbow. So we have two elbows, one on the left, one on the right. No, it's the contrary. One on the right, one on the left. So you really want to have the elbow shaping on the elbow and not inside the arm, because it doesn't serve any purpose. So you really want to know which one is the right sleeve and which one is the left sleeve, because we're not going to place the shaping at the same part. So this is my little trick. I have a red one. So this is on the right and this is on the left. So it should be green, but my sweater is green, so I have a yellow one. Red, green. So red is the right. It's like, you know, on the sailing boat, on the boat you have a tribord, bâbord. It's a maritime term. So right on the left and no, right, red on the right, and whatever you want. You can also just put a little note and say, this is the left sleeve. Whatever works for you. So I hope I didn't confuse you too much, but this is my left sleeve. So we're going to work the elbow shaping for the left sleeve. So I just follow the instruction and we're going to knit to the end of the first needle, that is where the marker is. I have half of the stitches on one side and half of the stitches on the other side. And then we knit to the marker. So here is my marker, so I can just slip it on the other side here. And then so I slide it, and then I follow instruction that tells me to then work 9 stitches. So I'm going to work 9 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 9. And then I'm going to turn. So we're making yarn over short rows, which is my favorite method, and which is the one that is most commonly used in Iceland. I personally don't like the wrap and turn. I always get confused which stitches has been wrapped. But you can always use either. That is, if in a pattern you have wrap and turn, you can instead read turn yarn over, or the contrary, if you have turn yarn over, you can always change it and just read wrap and turn. But I'm going to show you and you'll tell me if you like this way of doing. So we arrived where we have to turn, so we turn and then we make a yarn over at the beginning of the round. So to make a yarn over, it's just simply you bring the yarn to the back, and then it's just when you knit it, the next stitch is just going to make a yarn over. So if you're knitting English, you just go with your yarn at the back and you just purl like this, and you can see it's making a little yarn over, and we have this very recognizable pair of stitches together. And then if you knit the continental way, well, it's the same. You just keep your yarn here, bringing to the top, and then just knit your purl. I made a short purl. I will just untwist it on the way back. And so you have also kind of your yarn over here and you stitch there. And then you just follow the pattern instructions that's telling you to work back to the stitch marker. So to the end of my needle, basically. Here. And we can slide the marker. And then we're going to purl 3 stitches. And then make a new turn. And now we're going to make the yarn over from the right side. So it's the same. Instead of keeping the yarn at the back, we put it at the front of the needle. And we knit the stitch. And this is making kind of a yarn over here. Make this little pair. So I'm just going to show you it also continental. So it's the same, you just go in the front and that's it. So it's really easy. And then the instruction tell you to continue. So at this point, you know, you have your marker here that you're not really necessarily going to need anymore, because you can see clearly there is a hole here. And there is also a hole here. So those are the turns. So maybe you want to put your marker rather at the end of your round, just to make sure you don't get confused with your nibble, which one is what, because sometimes I think it's better to work the yarn over chartreuse flat, so I can just change the loop where they are spaced, so I don't have to make the see, I just rearranged my loop, so I have my end of round here, and then I can just work my chartreuse back and forth on those needles without having to each time slide the needle back and forth and so forth. So the pattern is telling you now to continue to knit to 2 stitches before the gap. So when we say 2 stitches, we of course counting the so yeah, this one is twisted, it was my pearl. We're counting also the yarn over, so you have the gap here, very recognizable gap, and then you have your little pair. I'm going to untwist that one. And if you're not sure which one is a stitch, which one is a yarn over, I mean the stitch is coming straight from the stitch before and the yarn over is on the side. So yeah, but then we're just going to be there, and then we're going to turn and then make a yarn over, just bringing the yarn to the back, and then work back, purling to 2 stitches also before the next gap. So my next gap is here. You can see it very clearly. That's why I like the yarn over chartreuse, and you really see clearly. So here I have my stitch, and this coming out from the stitch below, and then you have on the side the yarn over, but it's a stitch. Also, it was made as a yarn over. It's still a stitch. It's another way of increasing. And then we're going to turn, make a yarn over, and then continue working like this. Until we arrive to the gap. So here so we have 2 gaps now, 1, 2, and this is where we are going to close them. So the simple is the principle between this is that so you don't see this gap, you're going to knit the stitch here with the yarn over that is there together, so it would close the gap. So we're just going to knit the stitch on each side, and that's about the principle of it. So we need 1 stitch before the gap, So we have a yarn over here and then a stitch, and then we want to knit them together so that the yarn over is under. We don't want to be under, so I just need to make a knit two together. And then I have next gap again right away. On here you can see it's a yarn over is coming from the side and not from another stitch, so I'm knitting them both together and my gaps are closed. And then I continue knitting in the round until I reach the next gap. So the next gaps, they are somewhere here. So I will have to actually knit to the end of my round. And then I'm also checking that I don't need to make any increases. That's why I've been working with markers, so it doesn't matter how many increases we make or the rate. So here I still have a long time to go. This is now my marker of the end of the round. So I can eventually re-put my stitches so that they are like, you know, so that I have the end of my round at the needles. And I'm just going to continue knitting like this. So we don't need now to be exactly in the middle anymore, doesn't matter. And in this next round, then we have our two gaps here. That here we have two gaps, they are here. 1, 2, that we are going to close. So we're going to do it in the same manner we just did. That is, knit to one stitch before the gap. There we go. So we knit to one stitch before the gap, and it's the same principle. We're going to knit those two together to close that gap, but this time this is the stitch here and this is the yarn over. And you can see how it comes from this side, and this one is a stitch. So we want to knit them together so that the yarn over is under, so we'll have to make a left leaning decrease. So for that I made a SK, so knit one, knit the next, slip the next one, and then go into both and knit them together. And this way we have closed our gap, and then we have the next gap, and we will do the same. SK, slip, slip, and then go inside both and knit them together. And now we don't have any more gap. And I really like this method because it's very straightforward. You can really clearly see the gaps and the pairs of yarn over and stitches. And it's really like, yeah, I just find it like really straightforward, easy. You don't have to stop, and you can really always like count your you know exactly how many rows you've made. It's very easy to count the gaps. So it's one of my favorites, I must say. There are many ways to make short rows, but that's the one I use by default. And then here I still have a long time to go before my next increase, and there you can see. So now we're just, we're just finished with the sleeves. We just have to continue increases and then knit the sleeve until the pattern tells us to stop, or just when we have reached the length we need. So, and then knit the second sleeve. So I think I'm reaching the length for my sleeve, so just trying it on. So it's the left sleeve, and I put the elbow here on the elbow to make sure, and then yeah, it's just like going under the underarm, so it's good. So in my size, the pattern tells me to stop 5 stitches before the end of the round, so I'm stopping that, and then I'm putting the next 10 stitches on the stitch holder. So it's what I'm going to do. So what I do is like I'm putting on a stitch holder those last 5 stitches, and then the next 5 stitches. So I have 5 stitches on either side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so this will be my underarm stitches that I will graft later. And so I will be able to graft them directly from here, and that's why I want to leave a long tail, so like about 30 centimeters or something. Just want to make sure to have enough. Now I just have to knit my second sleeve, and it's time to announce this week's winner. And it is Cutie Flower from New Mexico. So if you could contact me, and I will also send a PM. And your gift today will be, because we've been talking about it, will be a kit from the Birkelöf hat. So I will be in touch with you, so you can at least choose your colors, because it's hand knitting. We can choose our colors. That's the point. All right, and then I will see you next week with one of my favorite parts of a sweater, that is the yoke, and we will be almost done. I can't believe it. I'm also going to use the opportunity to make a little announcement. You know that there are a pandemic going on, and that the post is rather chaotic at the moment, so I'm going to prolong it, the knit along, for a month. I will of course continue with the schedule as planned for the tutorials, making the sweater, and then just I will be thinking of making some other videos. If you have any suggestions, or if there's something you would want me to talk more about, just comments below. I was myself thinking of going maybe through how to care for your Kristylopi sweater, how to mend it, repair it, and make sure it's just going to last you for years. I mean, you don't want to throw your sweater away because there's just a tiny little hole or something, or just because the underarm is getting unraveled. I mean, so I think it's a good skill to know. Then maybe I could talk to you a little bit about my yarn, the love story we are using in the pattern. I don't know if it's possible to visit the Istex factory with making the Kristylopi and Eglish because of this famous pandemic, but I can ask and see what they say, and then we could do a live also. Just we have to find the right time for it, so that most can participate, because I think we're all on very different schedule. But let me know your suggestion, and I'll see you next Friday.